What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical, average American here today to react to a pretty alarming headline that I saw talking about Europe starting to consider not using US technology. Now, I am aware that the EU has been, taking a lot of steps to kind of distance yourself from the United States and to not have to rely on us for certain things. And I mean, I do understand that, and I understand the reasoning for that. The trust in the United States has been seriously damaged, especially over the last year. And this is all a consequence of that. So I do understand, as bad as it is for the US, but given all that, I had not heard anything about this. This sounds like a pretty big deal. So today, I want to check out this video by TLDR News and learn more about what Europe is thinking in regards to using US tech. So let's take a look.
On Tuesday, French authorities raided the offices of Elon Musk's X in Paris as part of an investigation into suspected unlawful data extraction and complicity in the possession of CSAM.
What? How did I not hear about this? And this video is from like 2 weeks ago, I think. So I knew I was behind on this, but what? This was in France where they raided a Twitter headquarters or X whatever headquarters for like it says right there in the bottom, child sexual abuse material and like suspicion of illegal data collection. What? No wonder you guys are thinking about not using US technology just based on this.
Calling the move a political attack, Musk was quickly put in his place by France's Ministry for Europe and Foreign Affairs.
Oh my god. A political attack. That's so... Yeah, it's like you can't... Anytime someone has like a reasonable, reason to inquiry into something, is certainly when you're investigating child sexual abuse material. Like this says, that's not controversial. That's just like you need to do that. We need to live in a world where we investigate these types of things. That is a good thing. And using like, oh, it's a political attack on my website, like as a defense, like what? If there's nothing wrong, if there's nothing to hide, what's even the problem?
Which replied to Musk, suggesting he had used CSAM for political theatre on X, and adding, maybe that logic flies on some island, doesn't fly in France.
Oh, God.
This came just a few days after France's Prime Minister, Sébastien Lecornu, asked French ministries to ditch the US video platform Zoom and shift to Visio.
Whoa. This is happening. Oh my God, I did not know about this. And I didn't know that it was already like the ball is in motion. This is already happening. At least in France, what they're talking about here. Zoom, US technology company. X, Twitter, US technology. Like, yeah, that's honestly been one of the biggest strengths of the United States, is that we are pretty good at coming up with like useful, cool, popular technology. And we really, really rely on a lot of the world adopting it and using it, and Apple and Microsoft and whatever, and that's really important to like the United States' success so far. And I think that's a whole other thing that's getting me like very worried. Like there's a lot of things that are kind of contributing to what you could call the decline of the United States. And this is yet another thing.
A French alternative by the end of the year. And also after the French government blocked the French satellite operator Eutelsat from selling its ground antenna to a private equity firm to protect European digital autonomy, with Eutelsat being the only European competitor to Elon Musk's Starlink.
So in a lot of these cases, there are European, options to use. Man, this is bad for the United States, I gotta say. But we can't even be that upset if you think about it. Like in a lot of instances, just like this, with we do this with China, for example. Like we really don't allow a lot of Chinese software or a lot of really any Chinese technology of consequence into the United States because we're worried that they would do surveillance on us, collect data about us. That was the whole controversy with TikTok, the app, that it was made in China and that they were collecting our data and our information. And the United States has a pretty strict policy against allowing that because we don't trust China. And so if Europe doesn't trust the United States, it would be kind of hypocritical for us to criticize this, even though this is quite bad for us.
So in this video, we'll explain why France is ditching American tech and whether the rest of Europe might follow suit.
Oh my God. I mean, I already kind of understand why, just given these reasons, but so it's already started in France and it might be escalating in all of Europe, or let's see what else is going on.
Let's get straight into it and explain why France is ditching American tech. In a nutshell, it's about building European digital sovereignty. In other words, increasing Europe's ability to develop, control, and govern its own digital services and infrastructure.
Yeah, Amazon Web Services, literally hosting websites. Google. Some of these things, I'm not trying to sound egotistical here, but some of these things are American technology that is so deeply entwined into everyday life, so deeply connected. Like Google, it would be difficult to just give up Google. They provide a pretty unique service that's very convenient and very good. It just kind of depends on how far you're pushed, I suppose. At a certain point, I guess you would be willing to give up all these things.
Without being overly dependent on foreign services. At the moment, according to a report by the Bertelsmann Stiftung, the EU is highly dependent on non-EU countries, mainly the US and China, for more than 80% of its digital technologies and infrastructure.
Wow.
To give a concrete example, the US giants Amazon, Microsoft and Google dominate almost 70% of the European cloud computing market, while the EU's biggest cloud provider holds just 2%.
Wow. Yeah, and this is certainly, selfishly, in the United States, we like this. We like that the world uses it. We like that it's popular here in the US. We control it. We don't have to worry about privacy, even though I guess we've all just kind of accepted that the US government has all of our data. As Americans, that's kind of a whole other issue, what they're doing with that. But at least it's our own country, I guess, in a perverted way. I could see where this would be very concerning if you're Europe. Or maybe not for the longest time, not that concerning, because there was trust. It's funny how so much boils down to trust. So fundamental, so elemental. Trust. Once that's gone, it's oh crap, we're using the US's web hosting and email stuff. It's unfortunate, honestly, that the United States has really created this. Let's be honest, pretty much created this whole situation.
Nor does the EU look likely to catch up anytime soon, given it also lags behind both the US and China in terms of digital research and development, or R&D spending, representing just 7% of global R&D in software and internet technologies, compared to 71% by US firms and 15% by Chinese firms.
So it would not be easy for Europe to get away from American technology. I don't know if there's alternatives that are more trustworthy or really what the solution is here, because I didn't even know how little like of this specific types of research and development and digital stuff Europe actually owns.
Like with other critical dependencies, this creates strategic risks for the EU. However, unlike with physical goods, where the EU can switch to another provider if a supplier fails or becomes unreliable, as happened following Russia's invasion of Ukraine, when the EU rapidly pivoted away from Russian oil and gas to other sources of energy, digital dependencies create different and more complex kinds of risks. Because digital services are ongoing relationships, rather than a single product that's shipped and received in a done deal,
Netflix. I'm sorry. I'm distracted looking at all the digital services here. You're going to give up Netflix? Man, you guys must be actually pissed off at us to give up Netflix. All right, joking aside, there's a lot of stuff. This is like, do Europeans think about this very much? Because obviously, as an American, I've never really thought about this. But, you know, relating it to China and how we don't use Chinese stuff, really, helps me kind of, you know, understand the situation you're in. It's just weird that we are the ones you're trying to, like, break away from, you know?
the supplier can change the terms, prices, features, or access of their services after adoption, giving them significant and continuous control over foreign export markets.
Sure.
For instance, in the early days of advertising on Facebook, many European businesses initially built marketing strategies around the platform's organic reach, but changes to the algorithm then drastically reduced visibility and pushed firms towards paid ads, effectively changing market access without negotiations.
Yeah, okay. I hadn't even thought about this. This is kind of a whole different thing, like how any digital product can screw you over because they can just change it like instantly in mass. Any digital product like this, we're all kind of slaves to that. It's just like maybe it's worse when like the company isn't even owned in your country.
As such, in recent months, there's been a growing push for the EU to build up its digital autonomy, both to regain control over its data and to limit the impact of foreign, especially American, tech companies on information flows.
Wow. Like I said, it's funny because we worry about this. And now it's like seeing it from the other side. Europe is worried about us stealing your data, stealing your information, or collecting it, or changing the terms of use, or which, you know, if I'm being completely honest with our current administration, our current government, that's probably a very valid concern for you to have. I'm going to be honest.
Having previously criticised the European Commission in November for being too slow in enforcing its tech rules, French President Emmanuel Macron used his Davos speech last month to call for a ramping up of European investment into critical technologies like AI, quantum computing, and defence and security. Then,
yeah, even with AI, like you have OpenAI and or ChatGPT, and Gemini, and more American companies really like trying to lead the way there, which is probably, especially with AI, probably not. It's probably pretty disconcerting, to be honest. I don't know what China's doing in terms of AI, but I would imagine they're doing extraordinarily well, just knowing how good they are at technology. I don't know, is there a European AI, like ChatGPT thing? You know what I mean?
last week, French cybercrime authorities raided X's office in Paris as part of an investigation into unlawful data extraction and the suspected abuse of algorithms. And prosecutors have summoned X owner Elon Musk and former chief executive Linda Yaccarino for questioning in April.
Wow. I'm surprised I didn't hear about that. They raided like X offices with suspicion of like Twitter or X stealing data, like from European users and stuff. That'll be very interesting to see where that goes, actually.
Aside from that, France has also ordered its state employees to switch to Visio, a French alternative to the American video conferencing platform Zoom, by the end of the year to, quote, guarantee the security, confidentiality, and resilience of public electronic communications.
You know, it's sad that it's come to this, like that the trust in the United States is so low that you don't want to use Zoom, you don't want to communicate on US-owned technology, but I have to admit, it makes sense.
With the Visio project ultimately aimed at creating a French alternative to the US's Microsoft Office or Google Suite.
Oh.
Other EU countries are also taking steps to reduce their dependencies on American tech in sensitive areas.
Okay.
The Austrian military has reportedly ditched Microsoft Office, while the German state of Schleswig-Holstein has moved some 40,000 state workers' email from Microsoft Exchange and Outlook to open source alternatives.
Wow.
So the question now is,
It's
will
happening.
the rest of Europe follow France's lead? Well, last week, the European Parliament passed a resolution calling on member states to, quote, strengthen European technological sovereignty by facilitating the procurement of European digital products and services where possible.
This is happening. This is really happening. Like, this is a serious... I didn't know this was such a serious discussion in Europe. I didn't know.
This echoes calls for European digital autonomy from figures like Macron and the former head of the European Central Bank, Mario Draghi, whose 2024 report on improving European competitiveness also called for further digitization to help the EU catch up with the US and China. Moreover, back in September, European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen used her 2025 State of the Union address to push for European digital sovereignty and proposed an EU Cloud and AI Development Act.
Wow. So this is something that the EU has talked about in the past. This is not necessarily a brand new idea, but perhaps, you know, in the last year, since Donald Trump was elected, and the United States has, you know, sort of ruined its reputation in many ways. This is becoming a much more critical mission, basically. This is suddenly, like, way more important.
Now, in the very early stages, aimed at strengthening Europe's capacities in AI and cloud infrastructure. This growing push for European digital sovereignty also follows the US's repeated attempts to punish the EU for its efforts to regulate American tech. In late December, the Trump administration imposed travel bans on Europeans involved in digital safety, including former EU Commissioner Thierry Breton, who played a key role in establishing the EU's digital rules. In August, Trump threatened tariffs on countries that discriminate against American tech firms, and the US has also repeatedly challenged the EU's digital rules through diplomatic pressure and aggressive rhetoric.
Yeah, it's like when you hear it like this, of course, Europe is heavily incentivized to get away from relying on US technology. If other countries were doing to us what we have done to you, it would be infuriating. It'd be maddening. It'd be scary. You'd want to do everything in your power to put yourself into the driver's seat so you don't have to rely on anyone like that. Again, it's just so sad that I have to talk about the United States like this, but you can't pretend that, like, reality isn't reality. So, yeah, this makes a lot of sense.
While the EU's regulatory policies are motivated more by concerns about user welfare and online safety than digital sovereignty, this ongoing battle between EU and US big tech firms reveals the degree of European anxiety about the continent's reliance on American tech.
Yeah, we're literally we should be grateful that Europe uses so much US technology. We should be really happy and grateful. Instead, we're using it as, like, leverage. Now we're using it, like, to threaten you. Like,
all that said, de-risking from US tech won't be easy, and a total decoupling is probably impossible given the global reach and dominance of US tech.
It was certain, you know, thinking about the companies we're talking about, the services, it would be extremely hard. I'm just thinking about myself trying to not use any of these services. That would be nearly impossible.
Nonetheless, de-risking is a matter of degree, And if Europe can at least nurture some homegrown alternatives, this will be enough to break the monopolistic hold US tech currently enjoys.
Sure.
One proposal to achieve this is the creation of a European Sovereign Tech Fund, similar to Germany's Sovereign Tech Fund, made up of EU funds, contributions from member states, and private sector investment that would provide financing for critical open source software infrastructure across Europe. While this would likely involve some heated debates at the EU level about joint financing, the argument proponents are making is that the cost of inaction now could be far higher than any short-term economic pain involved in building European digital sovereignty.
Yeah, it seems really annoying. Like, on its face, it seems like sort of an obvious thing to do for Europe to go down this path and become more, more in control of what technology you have to use. But it just sounds so annoying, the logistics and the politics that you have to go through to actually get it done.
Particularly as the US becomes an even more unpredictable partner. Now, this is a big story.
Oh, okay. So that's the end. Well, that was very good. This was by TLDR News, who really keep me informed about a lot of things going on in Europe that are extremely important. So I am glad I took a look at this, but that's not to say, like, this is so disappointing for the US, embarrassing for us, like, but frankly, these is the rational consequences for what we've done, and it's something I hadn't thought about, something that a lot of Americans, probably aren't really aware of. But we, looking from our side of this, we make a lot of money and revenue and frankly, a lot of leverage operating this technology in Europe and around the world, and with having a lot of people around the world use it. And I think we've kind of taken it for granted. And if that goes away, so much US power and wealth goes away. That's just a fact. So, on one hand, I think it's the right thing for Europe to do. Like, I think objectively that's the right thing. And on the other hand, it's terrible for the U.S. So it's very conflicting for me. But it's good to learn about this. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, feel free to give this video a like or leave a comment with your thoughts on this whole situation. And if you're European, your thoughts on getting away from using U.S. technology, and if you support that, or if that would be difficult for you, or what, that'd be interesting to hear about. Very interesting. And if you're interested in more videos like this, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.